Hi, everybody. Lauren here with Blaine, and I'm really excited about today's podcast. So, we are already at the point where we are going to create a spin off podcast. And maybe you remember some of your favorite shows growing up, or you watch them on repeat on some of the places that you can watch old shows on. But some of the favorite shows of mine were actually spin-off shows. So first of all, The Jeffersons was an amazing show, and that was actually a spin-off from All in the Family. And my personal favorite of all spin-off shows would be Laverne and Shirley. Some of you know, I have a cap with the L on it. I used to have the L on my shirt growing up when I would play with my best friend growing up, Sandra. She was S and I was L, and we would play Laverne and Shirley. That was actually a spin-off from Happy Days. So, like, super successful spin-off. And then there was Frasier, which was a spin-off from Cheers. And even podcasts have had their own spin-offs. Maybe you've heard of the Rich Roll podcast. He has a spin-off called Roll On. So we are in a long tradition of amazing spin-offs, and we at Energy Works are creating our own spin-off show. And it is called Cool People, Big Ideas. And this came from some interviews that I had done a few years ago. Some of you maybe listened to them on some summits that we had at Energy Medicine Yoga, where I got to interview amazing, cool people. And I loved it. I adore interviewing people. I would do all of the research and read all their books and listen to all the podcasts they had been on, or their shows if they were in film or television, and listen to their music if they were musicians, and pull together a conversation. And so many of these people said to me that they had the most fun being interviewed by me than they had from anybody else. So that really gave me this confidence to keep interviewing people. And I just had so much fun doing it that I don't want to stop. And so I asked Blaine if we could have a spin-off of Energy Works. And so Energy Works presents Cool People, Big Ideas. And so our first episode of that podcast will drop next week. And it is with one of the coolest people I know, with some of the biggest ideas of anybody. And his name is Sebastian Junger. And you'll get to hear my interview with him next week. And that kicks off our whole month of Cool People, Big Ideas podcasts, where I'm interviewing people who have new books that they've just released. So Sebastian just released his book, In My Time of Dying. And then I'm going to interview Donna and David, our kind of starship, mothership, the people that helped us create Energy Medicine Yoga. They have a new book out. I have a yoga teacher, Mary Jo Federley, that I studied with years ago, who has the most incredible life story. She's got a new book out. Will Power, this incredible hip hop artist, has a new children's book out on vegan soul food. It's just incredible. I have so much fun talking to all these people who've written these incredible books. And we have one more secret final person that's going to be on our book release month. So to celebrate that, we thought that we would share with you some of our favorite books. So Blaine and I are here today. We each brought 3 of our favorite books to talk about. And Blaine, why don't you kick it off and share with us your first of your 3, maybe not, favorite. There's so many books, right? I have piles of books. I don't know if you guys can see in the background some of my books on the bookshelf, but I have piles. But we pulled out 3 that we want to share. So Blaine, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I love talking about books. And you and I are big learners. We're adult learners, and we're constantly studying, and we just turn to books. Burke, my partner, when another book shows up, on the porch, he's like, and where are we putting this? Another book? And so I've actually started trying, with shoes, people think, okay, if I buy a pair of shoes, I have to get rid of one of the pairs of shoes. I'm starting to do that with books. Like if I get a new book, I have to figure out which one I donate. So I don't have a very big house so that I can manage all that. So in trying to pick 3 books, which was super hard, in my mind I thought, which ones do I go to again and again? I just, get that craving. I need to read this book again. And all of mine, in a way, are spiritual books. So I thought that was interesting to me. I mean, I've read tons of books, and all of them in their own way are spiritual books. So I'll say my first one that I brought, it's called Initiation. And you can tell this book, it was written, the back of this book, it's $10. If that tells you how old it is. You could buy it for $10. And I got it used, and let's see if I can, it's from in 1960 is when, so I guess that makes it a 60-year-old book, right? 65-year-old book. And so what this book is about, I would put it in the category of spiritual books. And even in choosing the 3 books, one of them I wanted to choose was Autobiography of a Yogi, because that is a book that I have read probably more than this book. And it's in my Paramahansa Yogananda, the author of that book, is in my yoga lineage. The spiritual teacher I go study with in India is, Babaji, through Paramahansa Yogananda, and some other people down to my teacher, and it's my lineage. And I think it's an incredibly powerful book. Actually, Steve Jobs, in his will, put that everybody who went to his celebration of life would receive a copy of Autobiography of a Yogi. It's received a lot of popular acclaim, and it's really great. And I've read it more than this, and I would put it in the same category as this. What this book is about, it's a yoga teacher from Poland. And this was written in 1960, right? Or it was published in 1960. I don't know when she wrote it, but not that far after World War II. And being in Poland in World War II was quite a time. And that's not what this book is about, but it places the context a little bit. What this book is really about is her past lives. She's a yoga teacher who vividly remembers over time, in meditation, past lives come back to her, all the way back to thousands of years ago in ancient Egypt. And I think the topic of past lives is a big one, right? I mean, it's hard for us, especially those of us raised in the West, where you just wasn't a conversational thing that your family talked about their past lives, or, I wasn't raised in a religion that embraces that. And so this is just the way she remembers it. And she would tell her stories to her yoga classes, and they were like, you have got to write this down. Like, this needs, other people need to hear what you remember about the past. And so I think, if I'm correct, some of that was they would turn on recorders while she was talking and telling her stories and capture it that way. And then it eventually became a book. And she has other books too. And so the way that it really, first of all, learning about ancient Egypt and the way that she remembered it, and people communicated with telepathy, people of it's kind of like a certain order. They wouldn't even have to speak. And it is this very spiritual book about being a spiritual person in an ancient time that is, the whole story is just riveting. And then through her lives, there's interconnections of these people. She does. And so she'll start to recognize, as she's looking back, like, that person was this person in that life. And so she can start to connect the dots with people who've been through her lives. And the thing that I think this book and Autobiography of a Yogi have in common, in the words of my spiritual teacher in India, is Paramahansa Yogananda really broadens your mind to what is possible. Because you hear these things of people living without food, or holding their breath for a long time, or even levitating or something like that. And our Western minds are like, impossible, can't be, no way. And so when these books, maybe you get this little glimpse of, like, could it be possible? And then my study of energy really helped me believe more and more that these things are possible. because when you learn about how energy works and where we get our, like, we don't just get our energy from food. We don't. And so, maybe people can access energy that's not food and stay alive, because we're all accessing a lot of energy that is keeping us alive. And so I really think like this book and Paramahansa Yogananda's book and taking what I've learned about energy all together has really expanded my capacity for what could actually possibly be true. So it's my first book, I'll say, Initiation. It's Elizabeth, I don't know how she says it. It's Elizabeth with an S, Haich is the last name, H maybe.
So cool, Blaine. I love that. I love hearing about that. And okay, so because that's what you started with, I'm going to switch up which books I'm going to start with. And I'm going to bring this up. It's called Science Set Free by Rupert Sheldrake, 10 Paths to New Discovery. And if I look down right behind me on my bookshelf here, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 books by Rupert. And then there's a couple more over there. I have almost all of his books. I love his work, but this is my absolute favorite. I don't know how many copies of this book I have bought and given to other people. And I tell people who want to study yoga that this is what they should read first. This is how they should enter into a study of yoga, because similarly to what you were just saying, Blaine, is it opens your mind. It almost forces you to put your dogma down. And what he does is he takes the 10 dogmas of modern science and he turns them into questions instead of accepted facts. And it's so fascinating because he talks about, is nature mechanical? Is the total amount of matter and energy always the same? Are the laws of nature fixed? These are some of the questions that we don't question anymore in science. We just assume that this is settled science, settled law. They're actually called laws in science. And he calls them dogmas and flips them on their head and turns them into questions. Is nature purposeless? Is matter unconscious? Are minds confined to the brains? Here's a beautiful chapter. Are psychic phenomena illusory? So he turns these into questions, and it makes you question everything that you thought you had already accepted as fact. And the way he does it is really fascinating. And so I just give this to so many people because our assumptions about the way the world is are not necessarily true. And if the world isn't the way we think it is and have thought it is, what is it? What becomes possible if these laws that we have thought were so fixed are in fact not fixed at all? Then kind of everything is up for grabs. And Rupert has put into the world some of the most fascinating, mind bending ideas in science. And he has expanded my understanding of what is possible with his theories of morphic resonance, explaining some of the mysteries that still exist in the scientific community in ways that really make sense and that also bring in these ancient spiritual ideas that have been practiced for thousands of years that Western science says kind of poo-poos on, and that's not possible, all the things that you were just saying, Blaine. And he actually teaches a course called Science and Spirituality because he's a very spiritual person and he loves to connect the practices with science. So this is just one of my all-time favorite books, and I hope that you check it out too.
Awesome. Thank you. I guess all of mine are spiritual, but this one is probably more directly spiritual than the other one. The Yamas and Niyamas, Exploring Yoga's Ethical Practice by Deborah Adele. This is a book that I use when I lead yoga teacher trainings, and if you don't study yoga, I mean, just a very high, simple comparison you can make, the yamas and niyamas are like the Ten Commandments in a way. It is in the eight-limbed path, the eight limbs of yoga. It is two of the eight limbs, and it's really starting with how to live a yogic life, a yogic lifestyle. And it's the things that you would imagine, like instead of being greedy, be generous. Instead of hoarding, share with others. Don't harm other people. It's that sort of thing. But it can, when you're reading ancient texts where this comes from, it can feel esoteric in a way. Kind of maybe like the Ten Commandments, okay, don't steal, don't lie, like they're just kind of so high level. It's really how do you practice it? Because when you have your day-to-day real life, you're getting cues to do all these things. Other people are doing all these things. Sometimes you feel like you have to do all these things. And so how do you not, or how do you understand this? And so this is just a beautifully written book with so many common days examples of how to live the life. When I give this to people or assign it, this is the book of all of the books we read in yoga teacher trainings that I hear people, I bought this for my child, I bought this for my sister, I bought this for my parent, I'm starting a book club, and this is the first book we're going to read. Like, this is the book that, and I teach women typically, that women really grab onto and want to share and share and share and share and share because they think it is so impactful. And I'll give one example for women. I mean, all people do this, including my partner, actually, who's not a woman. But one of the things that really resonates is talking about worrying about someone else, and how when you are worrying about someone else, you are actually harming them. You are saying, I don't trust you. I don't trust your path. I'm not going to allow you to make mistakes for you to learn from. I want you to do things my way. And it really says more about the worrier than it says about the person being worried about. And it's just this really incredible, impactful thing about how worry, you think, oh, I'm helping them and it's because I love them. I'm so worried about them. And it just explains so beautifully about how that's not the yogic path. And that's just one example. There's so many wonderful examples in here that really make you kind of step back a little bit. Things you've been doing your entire life that you thought were good and helpful, and makes you look at them a different way. So, yamas and niyamas, Deborah Adele.
Oh, I love that. I love that idea about worry. I'd never actually thought about it in that way. I'm not a worrier per se, but of course I worry about things, and I love that perspective. I might have to grab that book too. Oh no, Blaine, we both live in little houses and we're going to have more book explosion.
We can just ship them to each other.
Our spin-off books have spin-off books. Okay, I'm going to piggyback again on you because you're talking about that you teach mostly to women. And so here is my second pick book, written by my mentor, the woman who really saved my life. No, that is no exaggeration. And helped me to start energy medicine yoga, and continues to be a guiding light. And if you know her, she's a guiding light for you too. And this is Donna Eden and her book, Energy Medicine for Women. This book, I mean, you can just see it's like all beat up. I've got all the pages annotated with like where I want to go back to. And even though I don't only teach to women, nor do you, Blaine, but the predominant of yoga practitioners just happen to be women. And this book covers every phase of a woman's life, from premenstrual to postmenopause into the crone years. And it is absolutely stunning and fascinating. Even if you're not in that part of life right now, it's fascinating to read about it. Of course, Donna sees energy. And so her interpretation of some of these experiences that women have is different from the traditional or the Western, it's certainly different from the Western medical perspective. And it's not only her perspective, but it's tools to help you through every phase. And all of these little sticky notes are not just from, oh, there's Donna, she signed my book, there's the signature. But these are not just, sticky notes from for teaching classes, but for my own personal use. I have had so much good information and techniques that have really helped me and continue to and will continue to throughout all of the rest of the phases of my life that I have left. And I always say, I just was at Kripalu last month, and a woman was walking by and it was really cold out and she was wearing a tank top. And I was like, aren't you freezing? And she said, I'm in the middle of a hot flash. I am actually broiling. And I said, oh, can I show you something? And I showed her this point and she was like, what? Oh my gosh, it's already going away. And I was like, go to the bookstore because I know they have this book, Energy Medicine for Women. So I have told more women to get this book and share it with other women. And if you have a man in your life, then they're going to get this book for you for the next holiday that needs to have a book gift, because this is just epic. So there it is.
When I was thinking about my third book, I almost grabbed that one. But you and I had talked a little bit about what books we thought we were going to bring for this podcast. And I was like, I think Lauren said she's maybe going to bring that one. So while it would have been cute if we both brought the same book, I decided to do a different one instead. Yes, true. Everything Lauren said, yes, great book. We don't have to ship each other that one. We already have it. Okay, so my third one, I don't have it with me. I do some snowbirding into Florida, and when I went to Florida this past winter season, I took it with me because I knew I wanted to get myself into a creative space, and I didn't bring it back. But it's called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and we've talked on a previous episode about how I've historically not considered myself a creative person, and a little bit is I still don't necessarily think I am. My family was very convinced that I was going to be a piano player. By convinced means that's what they wished for me. Their plan was they will have this daughter and she will be a piano player. And, from my grandmother, and they bought me a piano and put me in piano lessons. And I didn't have interest. I didn't have natural ability. Just years of piano lessons until I finally just broke down and cried and was like, I want to be on the basketball team. It's like, please don't make me keep taking these piano lessons. And then in the summers, I went to this art camp at this art museum in Oklahoma City. And every single day, Mom would drop me off at art camp, and I would get picked up. And, she was a Montessori educator. I was raised in Montessori. It was just, kids were just supposed to be so creative. And then I would get to go to church camp. And I loved church camp because I could run around and swim and play sports. And, church camp was amazing. Art camp was like, can school just start again? May I please just go to school? Because art camp is worse than school. And so I think that is some of who I am. But I've longed to be creative for a while. So The Artist's Way, it was written, I think, in 92, the early 90s. So we were coming out of the 80s. And so American society was not hugely creative. And so what is in this book, I probably didn't pick up this book until 10 years ago. But I can imagine that at the time it was fairly revolutionary. And so if you've heard of morning pages, that came from The Artist's Way. And Julia Cameron says that your creativity is spirit. Creativity is God. Creativity is divine. Pick your word. And that you need to get out of your own way because it is there for you to access. It flows through you. Everyone has it. Everyone has access to it. And so she has these 12 steps One of them is morning pages, which even on TikTok now, I know that morning pages completely trends all the time, where you just get up in the morning and you just hand write 3 pages of anything just to get the clutter out and the cobwebs and all that sort of thing, so you can start to think more clearly. She says to just throw them away. It's not even a journal. Like, you just literally write, tear it up, throw it in the trash the next morning just to clear the cobwebs. But she also talks a lot about moving your body. So, it's a 12-week. She has a 12-week plan of what things to do to get out of your own way and become more creative. But a lot of it is what we would say in yoga. She says, have an artist date with yourself every single week where you go out alone. You're alone on your artist date. And so it's having alone time. It's doing self-care. It's moving your body. It's nourishing yourself. It's positive mindset, right? She has all these 12 steps, and I really started practicing them. And I have to say that, it worked for me. Like, the creativity started to flow. The book Big Magic came afterwards by Liz Gilbert, and Liz builds on a lot of these same ideas that it's all out there, right? And if you don't move on your creative ideas, somebody else will, because it's really not coming from you, it is coming through you. And if it doesn't find a voice through you, it will find a voice through somebody else. And so this was the paradigm shift for me that I had. And I love to go back when I'm feeling stuck. I love to go back to Artist Way. I think it's an incredibly transformational book. So that's my third.
I love it. I love it. I was actually just glancing at my bookshelf to see if I could just put my eyes on my copy of it. But from my angle, I can't, but it's in there, The Artist Way. And I also remember the pages and the art dates. Those are the two things that still really jump out at me. And so I love that. And, you talking about that it comes through you, where it's coming from is the fields of information, which is what Rupert Sheldrake talks about. These fields that we are all in, and that information is available. And he actually talks about a study that he did, or not a study. He did a little experiment, like an N of 4, I think. His son was taking his final exams, and they decided to take them from the end back to the beginning. So everyone in all over the UK takes these exams at the exact same day, the exact same time. And so they say it's 9 o'clock in the morning. They start at 9 and go from 1 to 100. Well, him and his 3 friends started from 100 and went back. So at some point they crossed over the point that everyone else had already finished, and a certain percentage of them would have gotten them correct. And so they got in the field, the answers were already there. And they did phenomenally better than they ascertained that they would have if they had done it forward to back. I don't know exactly how it was constructed, but that is because they're in the field. It's in the field. And when you put your answers in the field, those answers are in the field. And so if you get this great idea, act on it, because it's in the field. Someone else will grab it too. So that's really cool. I love that. We're tying all these books together. Okay, so my third book, finally, we're going to have a fiction book. And I really thought long and hard. And Blaine and I were just back and forth at 3. How do we do 3? Because we're both big readers. And I started to think back, well, did I want to include a formative book from my childhood? And I thought of Charlotte's Web, because that was such a formative book. Stuart Little, all of E.B. White, I love. And as an adult, I love his work. But what I landed on was actually, I can't believe it took me this long to land on it, because this is the only book that I have read this much. I don't think I've read any other books as many times as I have read The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. And that book was given to me by my favorite aunt, my soul, I can't call her soul sister, soul mother, godmother. Um, she is an aunt by marriage, so we don't actually have any blood relation, but she was married to my namesake uncle. And she is just the woman who really, of all people in my life, taught me how to be a woman, taught me how to love being a woman and to love other women, and all of the things that come when we're starting to learn who we are as young women. And she gave me this book as a young woman. And she was surprised I had never read it, and I hadn't. And what it is a retelling of the Arthurian legend through the eyes of a woman. It brings it, there's tons of magic, which I love. There's fields, which I didn't realize until much later, all this field theory where they go through the veils into these other worlds that exist concurrently on the worlds that we see. But what was the most powerful thing was giving a voice to those who had never had a voice, to these women who had always been not even mentioned, or if mentioned as like the asterisk little footnote at the end of something. All of the stories never were told from the perspective of the women involved in them. And this story completely flipped Arthurian legend and took it through the eyes of the women who lived it and were part of this, one of the kind of pivotal stories that we have, legends in our in the fields that we all grew up with, Arthurian legends. I mean, Camelot has been just this iconic idea forever, but to view it through the pain and the suffering and the beauty and the overcoming, to have it told through the woman's perspective was so incredible for me to read. And it shared, women being mean to each other and women supporting each other, all of the things that I was going through as a young woman myself, making the choices of what kind of woman did I want to be? Did I want to be the woman that lifted other women up? Or did I want to be the woman that was jealous of other women and tearing them down and trying to claw myself over them? And, zero sum game, only one of us can win and everyone else is losing. That could have been a path that I took. Even in the yoga world, that was a path that was available and still is. And instead, this book gave me the courage and the confidence and honestly the wisdom to be able to go in a different direction, one of being in community with women, being a part of the woman's experience in a positive way, and helping women on either side of me, those younger than me and those older than me, gleaning wisdom, sharing it out, being part of uplifting women. That phrase, women hold up half the world. I want to be one of those women holding up the half of the world and not pulling them down so that I could be up there. So anyway, that book has just been incredible. If you haven't read The Mists of Avalon, you're kind of lucky because you get to dive in and read The Mists of Avalon for the first time. It is so beautiful. That's my third book.
There we go. That's a good one. I'm glad you squeezed a fiction one in there.
Yeah. Wait, you and I are such studiers. We're always like studying and nonfiction and learning. But it really, sometimes you learn as much from fiction as well. It's just it's like a pivot in your brain there.
Yeah, so I guess we can wrap up here and we can close with a little encouragement for everybody to read. This is ironic, if you're listening to us now, you are not reading. And I listen to a ton of podcasts because I do it while I'm on the move. And, in the act of sitting down and being still and dedicating myself to a book, like we said, I generally reserve that for study. But we know that from science that the impact on the brain of reading over listening is really helpful for our brain health and maybe our mental health. And so encouraging, if you're listening to this, it might be still kind of summer season a little bit or tail ends of vacation. I know a lot of people like to read in the summer. So we're putting in a little vote for reading. It's such a great way to learn. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time on Energy Works.
Thanks, everybody.